Hey, Robonzo here. My guest for this episode is Brian Wolff. We talk about his work with a nonprofit called Kids in a New Groove, how this work and the mission behind it keeps him connected with his music, the release of his band's new single, and much more. Let's do this. This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. I want to say thanks to everyone who supports this podcast. The whole thing is intended to help independent musicians. Help them through a curation of expertise of other musicians and industry professionals. If you're loving the podcast, if you support the cause, visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the various ways that you can offer your support. And by the way, if you're a listener of the podcast, I consider you a supporter, especially if you share it with a friend. Again, that's unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn how you can get involved as a supporter. Have you heard of Bandzoogle? They power websites for musicians around the world, including Grammy winners. Their easy-to-use system will get you online fast. They have tons of mobile-friendly templates to help you customize your design and site content. It's built for musicians by musicians. Bandzoogle makes it easy to sell merch, grow your email list, integrate your socials, and they offer support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans are affordable. Go to bandzoogle.com to start your 30-day free trial. Use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year. Again, that's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO. Part of this episode is being featured on my other podcast, which is called Partner for Leads. That's partner, the number 4, LEADS, in case you go looking for it, and I recommend you do. If you're an independent musician, you may like that podcast too. It's for small business owners, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals. As an independent musician, you are all of those things. Brian found a way to give back to his local community of Austin, a way that really sings to him, so to speak. He's involved with Kids in a New Groove as a mentor coordinator. They are a nonprofit. They work with kids in foster care. It's a youth mentoring program with a slant toward teaching music. Consequently, he's been a full-time musician and now splits his time between his music and being part of the Kids in a Groove team. Brian's been on the podcast before, back in episode 55, a great episode. I recommend you check that out too. And he's a guy I've had some ongoing contact with. I quickly learned about him that he's a very giving person. And this conversation is focused on giving and how it enriches our lives, the lives of others, and our music. Here's me and Brian Wolff. We are ready.
Let's do it.
Brian, thank you for spending time with me today. It's really wonderful to have you back on my podcast, and today, podcasts, plural.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. You and I, for people that are listening to the Biz podcast, you and I are acquainted by way of my Unstarving Musician podcast. And for those of you listening to the Unstarving Musician podcast, Brian and I are familiar from there. And he's got an interesting endeavor, career thing going on that we've been wanting to talk about for a while. And so we're going to put him in the Biz part of that in the Biz podcast. And if you're an Unstarving Musician listener, you're going to hear, I believe, the whole thing right here. So yeah, the thing that we talked about some months ago, that it had been on your radar for a while because of what they do. And then you ended up working with them. Now, before you get into telling us about Kids in a New Groove, the Partner for Leads podcast, those of you listening, is we generally have small business owners and entrepreneurs on here. I know this is it's a nonprofit. I believe it's a somewhat small organization. You can correct me on that in a minute if I'm wrong, Brian. And but Brian is entrepreneurial. He's been an independent musician for some time, and so we're going to kind of weave that into the conversation on the business side. And for those of you listening to the Unstarving Musician, well, you probably just care less about that part of it. But tell me about Kids in a New Groove.
Yeah, so basically, Kids in a New Groove started just over 10 years ago, and it provides music mentorship to kids in foster care. So what that means, basically, music mentorship will look like music lessons, right? But really we're going for that mentorship angle. So kind of a better, more understandable maybe way to describe it is it's sort of big brother, big sister, but with using music as a vehicle to create that connection.
How cool is that?
Yeah, pretty awesome.
And so you are with them in a full-time capacity these days. Initially, you were doing some volunteering with them, right?
Yeah, so I was a mentor myself for about a year and kind of came across them in a pretty interesting way. I know my band, Fair City Fire, was looking for ways to kind of give back to the community, and we thought about kind of a different sort of nonprofit than we maybe had heard of yet, and kind of we did a little research, and we found Kids in the New Groove as maybe something we could do a benefit concert for, and we really found it that way. And then some of the staff showed up and kind of presented what it really was, and kind of as I found out more about it, it was sort of like okay, I got to do this now. Like I got to go help out a kid. This is the way I can really use my time in a really meaningful way. And so that's kind of how it started. And I was a mentor for about a year, and kind of, unfortunately, as what happens a lot in foster care, my student had to move away. Students, at least in Texas, have to move on average 6 times while they're in foster care.
Oh my goodness.
Which is just unbelievable. That stat is staggering if you think about kind of what that means. I mean, it's not like you're moving with your family somewhere. It's like you've got a whole new group of people you're living with, new situation, probably a new school, all that stuff. So that just adds to kind of the stress of the whole thing. And so, unfortunately, my student had to move away, and it was about 3 hours away, so we really couldn't keep our mentorship relationship together. But at that same time, this position for community engagement coordinator opened up, and they told me about it. And it was just kind of the timing of it was like, okay, well, I got to go do this now. Like, this seems like a really good way for me to kind of spread the word and, spend my time doing that, helping more kids indirectly.
Yeah. So what does that entail for you on a day-to-day or weekly basis, being the community engagement coordinator?
So, I mean, really kind of, we've been pretty focused this year on developing sort of like lanes for everybody. Because we're so small, there's only 4 of us on staff. It's kind of, I think, for a lot of small organizations, it's kind of like tempting to sort of kind of have everybody do everything. But it's, we kind of seem to find the better path this year was to kind of divide it up. So really my job mostly entails dealing with the mentors. So, and especially because I've been involved with the music scene for so long, I really know how to speak with musicians. I know kind of things that might come up with musicians because I am one, and it's a pretty interesting thing. And so, a lot of my job is to recruit new mentors, and it's also to kind of help them through the process. Any questions they have coming up, anything they need to make their lesson successful, we'll just send it their way. And I'm pretty much their point of contact for that stuff.
And how are you doing in terms of meeting the demand, I guess, both personally and I guess on behalf of Kids in a New Groove? How is Kids in a New Groove doing where meeting the demand for this program and your demand as the coordinator of community engagement, the demand for the right type of mentors?
Yeah, so I think, like any good business, there's, kind of goals set every year of what should happen within the organization. And, we've kind of got hard numbers we're trying to hit, and basically this year the goal was to grow by 60 mentors. And we started at around 76 or so, and we are started the year around that. And then we're at about 117 now. So things are on a good track for sure. I'm pretty happy with kind of the way things are growing, and that just means that we're helping out more kids. There's over 180 students in our program now.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, it might be a little bit bigger than you might think. You know, it's pretty far reaching. I mean, it's within the Austin area and surrounding areas, but there's just a lot of kids in need, a lot of kids that are in foster care that really need some support and need kind of maybe a new way to get out some of the things they're feeling. And just really having a positive, stable adult come into their lives regularly makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I believe I'm kind of looking for it, and you might know here's one of them. And this is from Kids in a New Groove on Facebook. More than 500,000 American children are in foster care. And they're usually there because their options have kind of run out due to various circumstances. But yeah, that's a lot of kids. Texas is a big place with a lot of people, so I can imagine that a good chunk of it is right there in the greater Austin area. So I love that. That is really nice. So do you feel like with the numbers that you were talking about in terms of instructors and students, that are you happy with the demand that Kids in a New Groove is meeting? And not to say you're unhappy with it. I'm sure that you sound proud and happy with where you're at. You did say that, but I guess what I mean to say is, are you feeling still a lot of room for growth, or there's room for growth? You guys are on the perfect trajectory. What's your sentiment on that?
I really think we're on a good path here. And I think it's only going to grow as we kind of keep getting the message out there. Mm-hmm. And I think really there's no reason to kind of limit ourselves on that. There's unfortunately always going to be more kids to help. And, and I think there's a lot of kids that we're not helping that would love it. And it's just, they might not even know about it yet. Cause we're still trying to reach further and make sure more people know about us and can get our services. And then, that obviously means we need more musicians to want to volunteer their time this way. And I wanted to mention to you too, because I met her through you actually. Lara Price is actually one of our mentors now.
How nice.
She's been on your show. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about Laura, when so I'm going to Nashville in October, and similar to when I was in Austin, I've met a lot of people. So I've been reaching out ahead of time to say, hey, I'm going to be in town, and I'd love us to get together just to hang out a little bit. And so I was reflecting on when, we did it in Austin, and some people couldn't make it because they were traveling, which is very common. And I've gotten a little bit of that in Nashville. I may have a bigger number to work with this time, which is always good, right? More people to invite, more commitments, more people actually show up. But I remember poor Laura drove, a good ways, and she got, and Ray Prim had left, her and Ray probably hadn't seen each other in a little while. They're very fond of one another. And, she came and she goes, where is everybody? I'm like, well, this is kind of it, but she made the best of it. And I was really happy that the two of you had connected. And I'm even more happy that you told me, that she's involved and you guys have stayed in touch.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It kind of happened, sort of, she had met our executive director Laura Wood at an event at Antone's, I think, and they kind of just hit it off and started talking about what the program is. And then I just see her application come in. I'm like, I know her. That's really cool.
That's cool.
So it's funny, it wasn't us talking out, in the scene or anything. It was just kind of wow, that's really cool that kind of worked out that way. And then, my first step is always to kind of go meet with everybody that's interested to make sure they know what they're getting themselves into, mm-hmm. and kind of make sure they seem like a good fit for the program too. Because we don't just take everybody, it's kind of important to be selective and think about will this person be good with kids and stuff? And, it's kind of, it's important to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on that, whatever we can.
Yeah. And she seems, I'm also thinking about her story and her youth and her music, education. And she just seems like a perfect fit for something like that. So that's cool. What?
Yeah, she is.
So clearly, Kids in a New Groove is a great organization. It's a great cause. And on the surface, everything we're talking about, I can totally see the appeal. And there's a lot of other things. You're a musician and you're able to you're the type of person who can do mentoring, teach kids music. Is there anything about either Kids in a Groove as an organization, maybe the people, or something beyond what we've already discussed, or maybe just something personal that attracted you to the whole thing to start with?
I don't really know if there's anything like deep and super personal that really brought me in. It was just kind of like a way that I saw myself able to like give back, and
Sure.
and really a side benefit that I think a lot of people don't think of when they sign up for something like this, is that you're really plugging yourself into a pretty cool network of people too. I mentioned, there's 117 mentors right now, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to check the numbers on that, but that's 117 musicians in the Austin area that are all like good-hearted people that want to spend their time this way. So it's like when we have our mentor appreciation happy hours, it's kind of cool, the conversations that go on, with people that are all sort of in the music scene in their own way. And so that's kind of a little side benefit, and it's pretty nice to kind of see that happen and sort of connections being built through that, through everybody just doing something good with their time, and I think it's kind of maybe a little side benefit.
Nice.
For sure.
And today you and I are sort of working on your commitment to spread the word about what Kids in a New Groove is doing. I think it would be fun to know what other things or where podcast appearances might play in, or what other types of activities that you've done that are growing your network for Kids in the Groove, and how that's impacting your network on the other side of life, your music life, and maybe something else.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how kind of all that works. We've definitely gone to events put on by the Austin Music Foundation that are sort of just based on that. Basically, like they'll have a bunch of music nonprofits come out and talk about ways that musicians can give back. And it's sort of like I think they call it the Field of Love Music Expo. It happens every February, and it's pretty cool. So just going out there and talking to musicians is cool. Obviously there's kind of a lot of avenues through like Facebook and Reddit, a bunch of volunteer websites that if people are really looking for a way to volunteer, they'll find us there. So it's just kind of making sure all that stuff is up to date and consistent, making sure people know about it. And I think really just encouraging word of mouth, because that's going to be the best, like really thing. If somebody hears about what a great time another mentor had doing this and how meaningful it was for them, it seems to be the best way to bring somebody in,
Yeah.
Get them excited.
Well, this is a cool conversation to have for the small business owner and entrepreneurial minded individual, because by and large, they're always looking for the right way to give back. And I think this bit of our conversation is inspirational in that regard, and it hopefully gives some ideas to that demographic on how they can give back, or maybe just sort of check what they're doing. Like, yeah, am I do I feel like I'm making the right impact to the right audience? And I guess most of us gravitate towards something that we feel passionate for, and obviously we do. And sometimes we're able to attach ourselves to what I'll just call the low-hanging fruit, the things that are easily accessible where we might be, or they're just highly visible. Like, for instance, my wife and I have been involved in a couple of different spay and neuter organizations in Panama. And it's just, we love animals, and we run into other expats that are, and Panamanian people that are involved in this. And so we get involved. As a musician, obvious connection, and you you guys in the band Fair City Fire, which we probably want to move our discussion to in a minute. You purposefully put some thought into how you could give back. So yeah, I hope it's a nice inspiration. I do want to talk about Fair City Fire. Before we do that, everyone can learn about Kids in a Groove at kidsinanewgroove.org. And there's some really cool stuff there. And am I correct in saying that all their socials are there as well? But if not, Kids in a New Groove is a great way to search for you guys on Facebook and probably elsewhere.
You'll find us anywhere. And you can always email me at brian@kidsinanewgroove.org too if you want more information or you want to sign up. Mm-hmm. Happy to show you how to do that.
Yep. And for the business folk who wisely do a little social networking on LinkedIn, I see that there's some sort of link. Yeah, they have a LinkedIn company page, so that's cool. They're on Instagram and the Twitter, so that's nice. Yeah, thanks for the contact there. So yes, the side of you that is raw entrepreneurial spirit, Fair City Fire, your band. You have a new single out, and the last time that we spoke, you had a relatively new album out, kind of unique in these times to release a full-length album. We talked about that in an episode of The Unstarving Musician. Tell me about the new single. You told me the name is Simple Stupid. Tell me about it, and does it have anything in common with, or whatever comparisons you can make with what you did on your last album? And I want to say the title, but I'm going to get it wrong because it's not right in front of me. So maybe you can say that too, of the last album.
Oh, yeah. So the last album was called Shake Your Bones. And it came out last April. We were super happy with the way that came out and the reception that we got from, Austin. And we went on tour as well for that one. And that was great. But, this year we kind of decided, hey, we got to put something out. We've got this song we really like a lot, called Simple Stupid, and kind of really where that came from was just us kind of being intentional about not doing our typical thing of songwriting where we have we try to have a lot of twists and turns. By no means are we like a prog rock band or anything, but we do like to have a lot of little turns and stuff in our songs. And we said, let's just not do that for this one and just see how that feels. And just in a way, it's funny. It seems it's simple, but it was kind of challenging for us to go against our instinct to do that, to make a crazy bridge or something, Mm-hmm. So we wrote this song. It's just 2 chords and, kind of really, we were super intentional about that. And also just it's just a rockin' upbeat song. And it really is just, the lyrics are about keeping things simple. It's the whole thing kind of was born of that idea, and we stuck with that for sure. Nice. And we went on tour on that single recently, and that was a lot of fun. So
very nice. Yeah, very good. Well, let's take a break and listen to a clip from that track, Simple Stupid, by Fair City Fire. Let's talk a little bit about the business of music. If you can recall, since the last time we spoke, what what are you guys doing different, if anything, or what have you learned on the music scene, and perhaps something about the new single coming out, brought to light some new tactics for marketing the whole Fair City Fire machine, and since things are always changing, is there anything new that you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, well, our big event this summer, and we didn't do it last year, but the 2 summers previous, we did this big event called the Too Damn Hot Affair. We're bringing that back this year. So that's kind of a really big thing we're working on now. And we're talking about it on our social media pages through the tour we just went on and stuff, and kind of really hyping this event because it's a really big deal to us. And we've kind of made it a benefit to the Sims Foundation, at least partially benefiting them this year more so than others. And I think a big thing we've kind of adjusted with that is kind of finding more ways to raise money. We're going to have a silent auction table that all benefits the Sims Foundation, and they're going to be there accepting donations. We've got a sponsor for the event this year, which we've never had that. So that's pretty cool. Austin Detours is going to be sponsoring this event.
Austin
and
what?
We've got just some Austin Detours.
Okay.
They basically, my understanding is they provide kind of tours to like tourists that come through. They've got a big blue van, and a tour guide will kind of take them around and show them the cool parts of the city. And actually Joe, our drummer, is one of their tour guides. So that there's the connection, but they're actually sponsoring the event this year in the form of a donation to Sims. So kind of helping out with some of the silent auction stuff. So it's pretty cool to kind of have some partnerships in place like that, working with other people this time.
Very cool. And refresh my memory and let any new listeners know who the Sims Foundation is and what they do.
Yeah, so the Sims Foundation provides mental health assistance to musicians in the Austin area and their families. So, they kind of, they act as like sort of a middleman, and I can't think of the word for it. Maybe a case manager or something might be the right word, but, basically, you contact the Sims Foundation, let them know what you need, like what you're going through, if anything. And it's really a big thing they like to say and spread the word about is like, it doesn't have to be some kind of crisis. It could just be, hey, I could use a little therapy just to kind of help with my day-to-day life. And I think, I fully encourage people to do that, but it's really specifically for musicians. And I think that's really important, especially, with some of their, rehab, like drug rehab sort of functions that they have. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that is just so monumental within our industry. It's so important. And I think they do just great work. And this is something like, as soon as we heard about them, it was sort of a no-brainer. Like, let's help them out however we can. We kind of have been doing this event to help them out in our own small way.
And thanks for that. That's cool. And for those of you listening, it's simsfoundation.org. Yep. Is the Too Damn Hot Affair event yours, or meaning Fair City Fire's event, or someone else producing it? How does that work?
Yeah. We actually started it in 2016.
Love it.
And
Love it.
That's kind of our band's event. And I think, it was really born out of like, okay, things got to slow down because it gets so hot in the summer in Texas, and I think things as far as shows and going out and all that sort of stuff just naturally slow down. And we just kind of all talked about it that first year we did it. And we're like, instead of playing like a ton of shows this summer, like we normally were doing at the time, mm-hmm. let's just do one big event, call it something, and make it like its own thing. And hopefully it kind of grows from there. We didn't have any aspirations to like do it again or anything. It was just kind of like, let's try this thing. And We got a good response. We had a, good amount of people, and the lineup of bands was great. And it's just been something. The next year we kind of decided to kind of do it again. And then the next year we kind of had released the album and went on this tour, and we were kind of burnt out and decided to not do it last year. But this year we're bringing it back, and it's really exciting. It's a great event, and we're doing it at Antone's, which is such a legendary venue.
Yeah.
So, for nothing else, you get to see some cool rock bands play at Antone's. So
yeah, that's cool.
On a Saturday night. So yeah, it should be fun. It's on August 31st.
Yeah, for a good cause. Let's look at the Unstarving Musician production schedule and see how this aligns with the future of being published. Where are you? Man, I think I have you on. Let's see here. Your episode, well, actually, I'm doing it right now. We'll actually publish on the 30th.
Oh, sweet.
Not a ton of advance notice, but a day before might be kind of fun to one little extra push.
Yeah.
For the event.
That sounds great.
I had it's so funny today. I had my prior interview is an artist named My Name is Chapel, and he has a single that's dropping on the published date the week before yours will publish, and that's kind of fun when things line up that way.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah,
very, very fun. And for the Partner for Leads one, I may try to, let's see what that's actually scheduled to publish after your event, but I might I'm going to see if I can squeeze it in before to help. So it'll be on a couple of them. But in any case, I think we're still doing some good stuff here by telling people about all these things you're working on. So you told me all about the event, and we talked about the Sims Foundation on the heels of a question about what are you guys doing different within the business of your music. It sounds like originally that event, you mentioned that prior to that the effort was to play a lot of shows in the time of the year when it's extremely hot, and maybe it's kind of the seasonality of the Austin or Texas, or the Austin area specifically for you guys, maybe that it's hot. So maybe in a way it's kind of a down season. So it sounds like part of it was a way to keep the visibility going for the business of the band. Yeah, cool. And love how you guys made it a cause. That's very nice. Were there things that have come out of it either in the past event? How many is this one going to be? Is it going to be the second one you said?
This will be the third one, actually.
Okay. So has there been, even leading up to this third one, has anything unexpected come out of it at all that you wouldn't have that impacted the band or maybe some of the members individually?
I mean, I think our connection with the Sims Foundation comes to mind. I think, I actually, to go into my personal life, I definitely receive therapy once every 2 weeks through the Sims Foundation, and that's changed my life in a lot of ways. And not in like some kind of monumental way. It's just sort of like it's nice to just have a place to kind of get some of that stuff out and outside of that room, being able to focus on the things that I really need to focus on. I feel like it helps me not be distracted in my everyday life because I have a room to go talk to someone about the things that would distract me otherwise, Yeah. And I think we've got another band. I've got another bandmate that goes and receives therapy. I don't know if he's still doing that or not, but I know for a while he was. And I think that was really just born out of kind of that connection we made with them and seeing how important that was and how really just low pressure it really is. I think for a lot of people, seeking therapy or something seems like this monster something that just seems like, oh, I shouldn't do that unless I have some kind of huge issue going on or I'm in a crisis like that's. And I think, kind of making that connection with Sims at that event helped us realize it's not really that way. And, we had them on our podcast as well to talk about it, which was really cool. And so, I mean, I think if for nothing else, there's that. And it kind of showed us also, I think, the importance sometimes of really making your shows an event as opposed to like, this is just another show we're doing in town.
Right.
I think it can really make a big difference in the vibe and the energy of the place. And just really focusing on that one thing. I think it really showed us that. I mean, obviously I think bands do that really well in general with like album releases and stuff like that. But, I think it's also important from my experience and what we've gained to just do that in general, even if you're not releasing something like let's make this a thing. Let's make this something larger than like these three bands are playing on Friday night, because that's great. But I think there's something to having the identity of an event to really get people excited and come out.
Yeah, of course. And the mechanics of the event, is it a fundraiser or more of an awareness campaign or both?
So it's both really. I think 20% of ticket sales are going straight to the Sims Foundation, where we've received a donation from our sponsor, Austin Detours, to give to them.
That's so great.
And people can donate at the event. And also there's the silent auction table. So it's there's a lot of ways that hopefully that'll amount to a really nice chunk of change for them. So.
How did the Austin Detours donation come about?
Oh yeah. So that's just because Joe is one of their tour guides, our drummer, Joe. He works for them. So it was kind of a nice connection. And I know that they were sort of planning on doing their own event to help out Sims. And not sure how familiar you are with the Sims situation, but maybe your listeners aren't either. But they've experienced a ton of growth this year and are having a hard time keeping up financially with kind of the new demands. So I think a lot of people are wanting to step up to help them. And I know it was on Austin Detours' radar already to like maybe do an event. I think they were talking about doing some sort of like live band karaoke thing, which would have been really fun too. But, I think when Joe sort of mentioned this to his boss, she was just sort of like, why don't we just kind of work together? And it's pretty cool how that connection just sort of happened and made so much sense.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Leverage your network.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and I see, for those listening, it'll be in the show notes, but I see that Austin Detours does handcrafted Austin tours. And Austin is such a fascinating city, and I think everyone in the country is becoming more and more aware of Austin, for better or worse. But it's a really cool city and has been for decades. And I'm sure I've never done anything with Austin Detours, but perhaps I will next time we're there. My wife and I like this kind of stuff, but I'm sure it is a good time, and it looks like they get a lot of nice reviews. So that's cool. Very nice.
It's funny because Joe offered to take my parents and I out when my parents were visiting on a tour. And it was really funny to see him in that capacity. And man, I mean, he was such a professional. I could tell they trained him really well and stuff. And like the way he was speaking was so like, it was awesome. And he had like cool little jokes and like, it was pretty funny. And I was trying to throw him off just because because I had to try,
yeah.
Like asking him stupid questions or something in the back. And, he just answered all of them like a pro, and it was awesome. I couldn't throw him off his game. I got to give them credit. They're doing a good thing.
That's good. Sure. And it's funny because he's a bandmate, and I've been around. Well, was he there the day that I guested on Say It Loud? I don't remember.
Oh, boy, I'm trying to think about that. He might have been working that day. I don't know.
You know what? I think he was. But anyway, yeah. But I've seen the way you guys clown around together, and so I'm sure it was kind of... it was entertaining in a different kind of way to see him in that environment. So, well, speaking of the podcast and marketing and growth and audience and all that, how is the Say It Loud podcast going? What are you guys up to?
I mean, It's been good. It's definitely slowed down a little bit this year, just because I've gotten so busy, and our host Matt Jones has gotten really busy with a new job as well. So, just kind of trying to figure out where we can fit this into our lives now. We still want to do it. It's super important to us, and we've released maybe 10 episodes this year. But we actually kind of just really discovered the way that I think we're going to be able to make it work, where we can release one every 2 weeks and be consistent about it. At least I think that's a pretty, at this point, that's a pretty attainable and good enough goal, for us to have something coming out just that much. We're going to basically do 2 in a night is the plan. So none of us are having to block off more than one night for it in a month, and just kind of do it that way and see how that works for us. But, I think it is important to us, and we've really built a lot of really cool connections from it. I think that's the cool thing that none of us really expected going into that. We got to play with Jackie Benson on tour in Asheville, North Carolina. And she's just, I don't know if you've heard her yet or listened to any of her stuff, but she's a pretty phenomenal blues guitarist here in Austin. And she actually won best guitarist in the Austin Chronicle last year. So she's really skyrocketing, and has gone on tour with Gary Clark Jr. and all this stuff. I mean, I could list on and on all the stuff she's done. And she came on our podcast and talked to us about all that stuff. And it was really interesting, A, to have that conversation and to put that out there, and B, we made a really cool connection with someone we got to play a really nice show with in Asheville, North Carolina. And it's just kind of, that was born out of that podcast, which is a pretty cool thing that happened for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. I will definitely check her out. That's cool. And
yeah, you should have her on for sure.
I would love to.
If you can.
As soon as you started talking about her, I'm like, I got to contact her. Yeah, one thing I learned from my peers or our peers about the whole consistency and what you're doing, everyone knows with podcasting, especially if you're not a huge one or your goal wasn't, necessarily monetizing it, but it was something that was a little more just a passion project, is that consistency is great, but the number one thing is quality content. And I noticed that the world doesn't stop if I miss one of my, like the Unstarving Musician, for instance. It's been challenging to do weekly and predominantly interview episodes every week. And I'm at 100. Yours will be 115 or 116.
Wow. Congrats, man. That's great.
Thank you. And 118. But point being that, it can get hard. Everyone knows it. That's done it for a while. And the world doesn't stop if you miss the schedule. And I think you have a great plan doing batching your shows, your interviews, and one get together, 2 shows, a couple of episodes a month. Sounds like a great plan. But I'd just say, be open to more change if you have to be, and keep doing it as long as you love it. Sounds like a really cool thing for you guys. And I know that both local artists and those that happen to come through town that have the good fortune of being part of it really appreciate what you do.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think we'll keep it going as long as it makes sense and we're having a good time. And I think, like I say, man, it's important to us, and that just means that we're going to figure out how to make it work. It's crazy trying to do all these things all the time like I do, but they're all stuff that I want to do and want to do well. So,
yeah. And if people love, now this person is I'm going to mention someone, a podcaster. She's one of my favorites, but I'm kind of looking at her episodes. She doesn't even put one out every month, but when she does, I'm always listening. Her name is Rhonda Patrick. She's a PhD and just really, really diving into health where longevity is concerned, and particularly a quality of life as, we get older, and she's pretty young, but so she really speaks to audiences that are concerned about their long-term health. and does there's a lot of scientific research that's involved in it. But my point is about her, one of my favorite podcasts, just because the content is so great. She doesn't even publish weekly or monthly. When she puts one out, she puts one out, and it's a big deal. She's got it's a live thing. There's a whole YouTube of the entire interview, and I look at my own process as kind of a production beast, and I'm not doing any of the only YouTube action that I get is what gets pushed out automatically by my host, so that the audio's there for people. But those that are doing stuff like she is, or like you guys that are all getting together live, that's a big deal. But I think people will hang with you. So you probably don't need my encouragement, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
No, thank you so much. That's really cool. And I think it's just an important medium too, I think, to really, to get to know artists and stuff beyond just like what their face looks like and their music and stuff. And I think, there's just so much more to everyone's story, it seems. And, we'll also have nonprofits come on the show and talk about what they're doing. And we just had, some people that started a record company in Austin come on and talk about what that's like. And it's pretty interesting. I think that really lately we've been kind of just going outside the box of like what we were doing, which is just bands, and kind of making it more of like a music industry conversation. And what is that like here in Austin?
That's great.
We had a couple of photographers on that do that for a living, and that like they do band live shots for a living, and like that was really interesting too. I think it can get really fascinating when you dig into just really what other people's lives might be like, and what are their concerns, and what's working for them, and why do they love Austin. And it's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's a great angle. It really is. And you guys are a lot of fun to talk to. And is Matt, is he doing any stand-up at all since we last spoke?
Well, he's going to be doing, he may be doing some that he doesn't tell any of us about. I have a feeling. I have this feeling he's still doing that. But we actually have him as that's the other thing about the Too Damn Hot Affair is, since the first one, he's been the MC of every event. So he does a little stand up there.
Cool.
Where he kind of like tells some jokes for a little bit and then introduces the next band, and then kind of does that throughout the night and makes any announcements we need to make and stuff. And he's really good at that. So I'm excited about that. So, for nothing else, he's got a pretty solid stand-up slot coming up at the end of the month. So.
That's good. And for those of you that are...
So go see him there.
Yeah, and for those of you that are listening who don't know Matt, he is one of the co-hosts of the Say It Loud podcast, the Austin-centric, music-centric, what do you love about Austin-centric podcast that Brian, Matt, and the guys from Fair City Fire do. It's pretty fun. Had me on there a long time ago, and it was neat to do an in-person interview. I've been doing some remote stuff that way, but it's always fun to be with in the same room with people doing something like that. So yeah, Matt is when we first met. Also, the background I maybe learned from you that he had some stand-up comedy aspirations, and then somehow found out through him that he'd been doing a little bit here and there when we were having some one-on-one moments, or I don't know when, but then I just remember laughing as a group because everyone in the room, including those who weren't even part of the podcast interview, who happened to be at the recording space we were at, who know Matt, were like, Matt's been apparently doing some gigs without telling any of us, and I thought that was really funny to out him inadvertently.
Yeah, I think he's still doing that. I feel, but I don't know. He's not funny. Telling me. So.
But
I'm about to pry a little bit.
Stand-up comedy is so. I mean, for some people, just being a musician, like going to an open mic, for instance, maybe you're not in a band and you're just not a veteran at it, but you go to open mic. For some people, that's pretty tough. But man, stand-up comedy. Every time I read about or hear a comic on a podcast talk about their experiences, or comics talk about the experiences of that, I think, man, it's like being musician in some new situation tenfold almost every time you do it, until you hit some plateau. And even then, even then, depending on who you are, it can still be really nuts. Are you still doing the open mic, speaking of which?
No, actually, I stopped doing that kind of when I took on this new job. I just sort of realized I can't do everything. and I kind of had to cut something out somewhere. And, I cut some of the acoustic gigs I've been doing around town a little bit. And also that open mic I stopped doing, just for that reason. I mean, I was enjoying it, but it wasn't really worth the kind of feeling of just every night having to go and do something, which even though my life kind of is that way, like from work from 9 to 5 and then go to practice or go to a gig or whatever, but I like it, but the open mic just didn't seem to really fit into that picture.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, here's a little something I want you to do or think about, which has little or nothing to do with the open mic, but you mentioned the acoustic gigs. Look up tipsconcerts.com, and I'm sure you'll find them on Meetup. Just get familiar with it. And then, if you're so inclined, you can learn a little bit about one of its founders on an episode of the podcast. Let's see here. It's funny how quickly people's names slip your mind. Okay, Mark Addison. So he's in the Austin area. He's a producer. You know him?
Nope, I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, Mark Addison. And then, hold on, let's see. There's another person that you might know. I'm telling you this because I want you to look these people up and, do what you got to do to get to know them. They're wonderful people. And then who knows, maybe someday you guys will do an acoustic gig at Tips Concerts, which I hear is just all that and a bag of chips. I'd love to go to one someday. Wendy Colonna, she is the other artist. She's also been on the podcast. If you want, I'll send you links to those just so you can, at the very least, see all their stuff, but they're not hard to find. And it is her trailer that is on Mark's property. That is the iconic trailer I mistook for the one that you guys are sitting in front of Tips Concerts. And I think it would be really cool if you guys got in there. But those are two wonderful people you should talk to for Say It Loud. That'd be great.
Cool. That'd be great. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thank you for coming on again. I'm super stoked that I'm going to weave this into 2 different podcasts and podcast episodes. So for people that want to know more about what Brian does musically, faircityfire.com, and that's fair, F-A-I-R, faircityfire.com. And it looks like we can also preview the new single There, which you heard a clip of here. And man, thank you for coming on. It's really nice to talk to you. I hope that we start talking podcasts on a regular basis again, too.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Hey, thanks again for listening. If you are loving the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the various ways that you can offer your support. And again, if you're a listener, I consider you a supporter, especially if you shared it with a friend. Thank you. Have you heard of Bandzoogle? Yep, they're powering websites for musicians all over the world. Their easy system will get you online fast. They have tons of mobile-friendly templates to help you custom design your site and content. It's built for musicians by musicians. They make it easy to sell merch, grow your email list, integrate your socials, and they offer support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans are affordable. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a free trial, and be sure to use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo, R-O-B-O-N-Z-O. Look for show notes and links to most everything mentioned in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Thanks so much for listening. With a whole lot of gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.